apologize for the delay. We'll call to order the Ravenna City Council Committee of the Whole meeting at 6:04 p.m. And before we dive into the formal agenda, the mayor asked if he could speak this evening. So, Mayor, I'll turn it over to you.
I'm speaking tonight in reaction to our last meeting. There is no intent to disparage any council people, any people from the group that was there, or employees. Just as a brief review, we had the group that came in about their kids and their opportunities at the RAC. The group came unexpectedly to the committee meeting of council. I did, one of the people, I know most of those people, I had them in school. They're not bad people. And they were put into a situation of sorts that they did not understand, and how it was to work with that. But what they were trying to achieve did not belong in council meeting. That has to end up in my office, and it's an administrative problem or questions. It can be a variety of things, and I've always been available for that. They did not know that, and they did not know that they were in the wrong place with this. But as I look at this, and I've spent a lot of time thinking about this, we have rules established and guidelines that are established by council to permit citizens to be heard. Part of the rules requires that groups to be before the body, that they start at the proper level. In this case, they should have approached the committee that works with Judy at the RAC, and you're a member of you attend those when you're available, Dr. Calfee. But if they're unhappy there, then they can come to the mayor's office and plead their case in that case. And I'm talking about in general, this is how things are done. Of course, we all know that the meeting with what happened, there's no way that should go on for 51 minutes. With what was happening, and as the meeting progressed, the mentioning of programs, of names, of our workers, these sorts of things, that is never appropriately before council. That if there are problems with staff, those sorts of things we handle as an administrative thing in my office, or if council is going to hear something about that, it's done in executive session. Employees are different than elected officials. If you're an elected official, they can walk in here and abuse you any way they want to, in terms verbally with that. But when you're talking about employees, that's a whole different situation. I am here because I felt like I let our employees down, and I let the people down that came in. Once that meeting got started, and it started to take a difficult turn, once again, these folks weren't sure. They're not used to presenting and doing things. So it became somewhat emotional on their part. But we heard them out, and at the end of the meeting, we moved on with the business at hand. But this should not have happened. I should have said something. I should have said, let's stop this. It's in the wrong place. This needs to be in my office, and I did say that at one point, that that's where, if they want to get this resolved, it will be in my office with me. But the comments that were made about the staff, we can't undo that. But it's a problem. And I asked for this time to apologize to our staff members that were somewhat abused, verbally abused, during that situation. When I took over as mayor, one of the things that was a primary goal was to be a softer, gentler type of administration, where we had expectations of our employees, but they also had expectations of us. And furthermore, we also had expectations of our clientele that we serve in the community. And we wanted people to be able to express themselves, but in a civil manner. And we've worked hard to get away from that. And with this situation, I personally allowed that to get farther away than I should have on that situation. In a nutshell, that's where I'm at. I do apologize to our director, Judy, and to her Parks and Rec staff for what they've had to endure with this. And we've spent a lot of time working things out. I have had one meeting with the group, and it was productive. And we talked about programs. They were much more laid back and listening and participating. We were able to make some headway. But most of the things that were mentioned as problems don't exist. We have back-checked it, and a lot of them do not exist. Now, that doesn't mean the group that came in wouldn't like to see some other programs that their kids can be involved in. And that stuff, that's a legitimate question, and Judy deals with that all the time. So I don't want to take up any more time. I appreciate you giving me the ability to speak to this, but I asked to speak to this. Those folks didn't know they were on television, by the way. They didn't know it until they met with me. And I felt that happened on television. If I'm going to apologize, it ought to be on television. So I thank you for these few moments.
All right, thank you, Mayor. And we all have in front of us the updated time limit conversation for people wanting to address council. So looking forward, I think we have a process. I've had multiple conversations with, I think, all of council at this point, save for one. So moving forward, I think we've got action items on our end too. With that then, we'll move into item number one, which is approval of committee of the whole meeting minutes from June 20th, 2023. Were there any additions or corrections to those? Hearing none, do we have a motion to accept as submitted?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Number 2 on the agenda is an ordinance authorizing the mayor to send out RFPs for the street tree inventory. This is streets and sidewalks. Mr. Harper?
Yes, this is a request for proposals. This is done every 7 years. It's Shade Tree Committee oversees this process.
Any questions from council on this? Hearing none, what's the pleasure of the committee?
Ordinance.
Number 3 on the agenda is an ordinance authorizing a payment to ODOT for the Main Street paving project, also streets and sidewalks.
Yeah, this is to authorize our portion of the cost of that project. And just refresher, it's $626,556.
Questions from council on this item? What's the pleasure of the committee?
Ordinance.
Number 4 on the agenda is an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with Ohio Paving, also streets and sidewalks.
This project is the police parking lot down on
Spruce.
Spruce, thank you.
Yes.
And the entrance, the main entrance into Maple Grove Cemetery.
All right. Questions on this item? Anything we're missing? All right. What's the pleasure of the committee?
Ordinance.
Number 5 on the agenda is an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with Carvo Companies.
And the contract with Carvo will be for the Chestnut and Prospect Street resurfacing.
Any questions on this item? What's the pleasure of the committee?
Ordinance.
All right, number 6 on the agenda is an ordinance authorizing the certification of the 2023 tax assessments. This is utilities, Mr. Moskin.
Yeah, yes, this is for delinquent water bills, and along with that, the grass that has been delinquent and been keeping up when it gets too tall, that a contractor will be out there to cut that and take care of that. And then if it's not paid within sufficient time, those things will be turned over to the county tax department.
All right. Any questions on this? What's the pleasure of the committee?
Ordinance.
Number 7 on the agenda is an ordinance authorizing the mayor to sign a 2-year contract with AgriSledge, also utilities, Mr. Moskin.
Yeah, it's like it says, it's a 2-year contract. Wastewater treatment plant has been using this company for many, many years. Their cost has gone up, I believe it's 34 cents, which I look at it as extremely trivial compared to as much as the majority of things have gone up over the past 2 to 3 years. And this is something that's a necessity in that department.
Any questions? What's the pleasure of the committee?
Ordinance.
Number 8 on the agenda is an ordinance authorizing the mayor to accept the grant award for the water tank project. This is sponsored by utilities also.
This is for the water tank, sometimes referred to as standpipe, out on, you refer to on Route 14. For that to be redone, to my knowledge, the specs aren't exact, whether it's redoing the inside of it proportionately or having a different tank. Mr. Finney, do you have any other comments toward that?
No, we will remove the standpipe.
Okay.
And install an elevated tank similar to City Park.
Okay.
Details are still being figured out. We did receive a price to build a stainless steel tank close to $7 million.
Oh.
So we won't be doing stainless steel.
Do you have an idea of what you're going to paint on it this time? Just
No
curious.
idea.
That might be an interesting discussion, but I think we could be, something a little different, maybe.
Sure, absolutely.
Yes.
All right. Well, I appreciate the work on it. I know it's a big deal getting the grant, so
Thank you.
yeah, congrats on that. Is there any questions on this or anything you want to add?
No, I don't.
Okay. All right. If there's no questions, then what's the pleasure of the committee?
Ordinance.
Number 9 on the agenda is an ordinance amending section 283.03 settlement of small claims. This is also utilities, Mr. Moskin.
Okay, yes, this was for the address on Lincoln Avenue for the sewage backup, or the basement that was cleaned up, and they were not after any belongings that were ruined, just the cleanup itself from Servpro Company.
Was this was,
We
no,
already did that.
Okay,
this is the change in what the
The
petty
amount.
cash or the
okay,
amount
my
of money.
misunderstanding.
It's okay. That's
Okay.
what brought us to that discussion.
Okay, so this was
Sorry.
increased from $1,000 to $2,000.
Yep.
Correct.
Any questions from council on this? 2,000,
Thank you.
yeah, was the suggested amount. Yeah. Hearing no questions, what's the pleasure of the committee?
Ordinance.
Number 10 on the agenda is an ordinance to accept the CLG grant award for the design review consultant. This is sponsored by planning. Mr. Karas?
Yeah, this was a while back when we applied for a grant, and we were awarded the grant. It's a 60-40 split. The grant will pay $18,000, and the city's portion will be $12,000 for this long-term discussion we've had about hiring a consultant to help with our historic district guidelines and our design review commission code. So this is just to accept the grant, and then there will be a subsequent contract for Prospectus. It was a company that we voted on awarding, giving the contract to, contingent upon getting this grant. So we got the grant, accept the grant, and then the next step will be to develop a contract for the consultant we picked.
All right. Questions on this item? Hearing none, what's the pleasure of the committee?
Ordinance.
Number 11 on the agenda is an ordinance approving the creation of a JED with Ritztown Township, sponsored by Community and Economic Development. Ms. Wood?
Yes, exciting things coming, and this is part of it. And this is just to allow us to, or approve the creation of the JED with Ritztown Township. We'll go through the process for the public hearings. This is just approving that we want it.
And the goal for the public hearing, August 21st.
Yes.
That was the date. Any questions on this? Okay. I'm already getting calls on it, so, which I'm directing to Dennis. Hearing no questions, what's the pleasure of the committee?
Ordinance.
Number 12 is an ordinance appropriating $7,500 for the city's portion of the JED startup capital, also Community and Economic Development.
Yes, and it's exactly what it says. It's the startup. Both entities are putting towards the startup, cover some of the legal fees that went into drafting the contract and getting it going.
Questions on this item? Hearing none, what's the pleasure of the committee?
Ordinance.
And 13 is an ordinance approving a revolving loan fund grant to repair the brick wall at 214 West Main Street, also Community and Economic Development.
Yes, that's exactly what it says, to repair the wall from removing 218, preventing the water from getting into the basement of 214, and correcting it to go with the design of the future development. And the revolving loan fund would be the facade RLF, which was an old grant program that the city had years ago. And it's been sitting there for several years.
Questions on this item?
My only question was, on the tracking sheet, it does say that it exceeds the $50,000 threshold. How does this work? I mean, are we authorizing this money to NDS for them to pay a contractor to do the work? Is there going to be a bidding process? I know I know Mike Bogo said there would be for the actual project itself, but that didn't include the wall, which we are now paying for.
Right. I would imagine that they would be getting quotes for it,
Okay.
but I don't know
All right.
for sure.
Was it, I could be wrong, but I thought they said Guido's because it's their building. But I'm looking at.
They get to determine,
It gets to determine who gets to do it. That's what I thought.
Guido's does.
well, it's actually
their
their building. It's their wall.
We're fixing their
We're
building.
fixing it due to the damage that was done from
Okay.
taking down the adjacent building.
Oh, okay. Yeah, but all right, so it doesn't, I guess we don't have much more than the tracking sheet, correct? I don't
Correct.
remember getting any other details. Is that correct? Are we allocating or giving this money to Guido's? to
No,
fix it?
no.
See, now I'm
No,
confused.
it's not, no, it is not going to Guido's.
Okay. And I'm not saying,
Yeah,
don't
we
get me wrong, I'm not
damaged
saying
their
that's.
wall by taking down the other building,
Okay.
and because they were attached.
Right, no, I understand
And
all
so this is to correct
that. Okay.
the issues that
Yeah.
created.
And I fully, approve of that process. I'm just talking about the details of where does money go and who gets to pick who
So it
fixes it.
sounds like it's gonna go to
Guido's.
NDS, and then they're gonna take care of all the bidding process? Is that, I mean, that's what it
Well,
sounds
in
like.
reality,
Like,
it's,
all we're doing
But
is cutting a
Guido's
check to
has the right
NDS,
to
we're not
have who
sending
they
it to the
want.
contractor, right?
Well, they're saying
Mayor,
yes,
what were you-
so
Mayor,
that's why I'm confused.
What were you going to say, Mayor?
you have to keep in mind that they own this project.
Right.
We do not.
Exactly.
NDS.
Yes, because they still.
No, yeah.
Okay.
But I know that they were committed to bidding out the actual
The development,
project.
yes.
But I don't remember a discussion about whether this would be bid out, and I did notice that it says yes on the tracking sheet under the
But I don't think we need to worry
$50,000
about it.
bid. No, yeah.
And they'll have to follow the state guidelines for that process. And that's another reason why we don't know, because it has to follow the same guidelines as the original facade grant monies did.
So just so we're clear, so then this $178 plus $1,000 loan, grant, whatever, is going to NDS?
Yes.
Okay. That's kind of answers my question.
We got there.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Any questions any other questions on this? Sorry. Well, hearing none, what's the pleasure of the committee?
Ordinance.
All right, and that's everything on the agenda. We do have a request to go into executive session pending legal. Do I have that right? Or do you want to give the reason?
I just want to follow up on one thing that the mayor said earlier, regarding that meeting that was held a while back. When anyone comes before council,
Are we talking about this in executive session, or are
No.
we going to, okay. Okay.
my concern is that, if someone comes before you dealing with a personnel matter, this is not the forum for that. This forum is aimed at listening to the public in general, but if it's a matter of someone wanting to attack, question, or raise issues regarding an individual employee of the city, this is not the appropriate forum for that. In my opinion, you stop that conversation immediately.
Anyone could have stopped that conversation. So council is opening the door for people to come in and speak their First Amendment right to come in here with, whether we agree with the individual's name that was used, which I don't. But they have that right, and I've spoken to other law directors in other cities about this. So yes, an apology is necessary, and I tried to call that individual to get that across. I got a call from him instead. The bottom line here is that First Amendment right for somebody to come in and give their opinion, that complaint is here. I pulled you aside at the beginning and said, I don't know how this is going to go. Any one of us could have jumped in, is my point. And what you're telling people.
I'm not pointing my finger at anybody.
What you're-
All I'm saying is simply, if somebody comes here and wants to make allegations regarding an employee of the city, I think that should be stopped.
We get that
immediately,
every day.
Right? Well, then.
We could have, and now I know. Now I know. It's been made very, very clear. If someone comes in here talking about an administrative item, I will absolutely hop in and say, please take this in a conversation privately with the mayor.
And to be honest with you, I believe that they should begin there, all right? They should be aware of the fact that if there are issues dealing with some type of challenge to things happening within the personnel of our community, they go to the appropriate entity, whether it's the individual director for that department, and if they're not satisfied with that individual's response, the director, they go to the mayor. Only once they have, in my opinion, come to a decision that something more is needed, that cannot be handled administratively, then a matter may come before council, but that would come to you in an executive session, all right? So I'm not trying to attack you, I'm not trying to attack anybody. I'm just saying, try to bring some order, some
And that's what,
perhaps civility to the idea in which things happen. The idea that, how many people, I have no idea, 10, 12, whatever it was, come and want to perhaps feed upon themselves as far as how anger or whatever else builds. I don't think that's an appropriate thing to come before you. That goes to the administration. They go to the administration, they present their case. If they're not satisfied, then the administrator can come and explain that to you. And you do that in executive session, that there is an issue. Something is amiss, and we need to address it. But it's not something that needs to come before you and 10, 12 people try and start presenting their thoughts as to why things could be better.
And council, after the meeting, I've had lengthy conversations with everybody, most everybody on council about the rules that the mayor had pointed out. And in front of everybody, we've got what should and shouldn't come before council. We will be implementing a time limit. So all of those things, talking about decorum and the layout, streamlining the meeting, absolutely we will be looking at. Hindsight being 2020, yes. Any one of us could have hopped in, maybe should have hopped in. So we will look at it. I think what I don't want to do is discourage people from coming in to speak their mind on their First Amendment right, even if it's something we may have may disagree with.
Well, I guess what I would indicate to you is that when you have under B, to make personal attacks against members of council, the city administration, or other members of the public, that to me seems awfully broad. Does that include the employees of the city? I don't see that specifically mentioned. It says the administration, but doesn't necessarily talk about employees. So I think.
And this is a work, I told everybody on council, it's not out there yet.
I just saw this right now, so I'm telling you what my thoughts are. And believe me, I'm not here to try to challenge you. I'm not here to try and challenge anybody. I'm just trying to say that I think, in all honesty, we had talked about this issue. You were concerned about whether there was a chairman or the committee or you. I think you run this place. In my opinion, if the chairman of the committee is allowing something to happen that is contrary to the policy, I think you have the ability to stop, right?
And we've talked about the formality of council. I think we've talked about getting more formal with the process. So I think the decorum of the meetings, I've suggested, and I haven't had the conversation with all of council, but I think moving forward and prior to January, I want to have a conversation about the meeting structure, and taking a hard look at how we operate in the new, or whoever operates in the new year. So again, hindsight being 2020, I am taking a hard look at how the meeting is run, and I'll be working with city council members to rein it in.
I do have a question on this paper. So is this something that Andrew, the law director, will give his legal opinion once we go over, like what the end result is? Is this something that we'll have a legal opinion on? Or is, like, what is the legal opinion on this when we're done, is my question. Like, how are we going to know when we're done? I know this is just a draft that we've talked about and ideas, but when we're done, then are we going to give it then to the law director for legal opinion for if this stuff is actually legal or not?
We certainly can. This was taken from, there's many other cities who do the same thing. I think we were one of the few who do not have a time limit, do
Right.
not have a form when you walk in the room to fill out. So, yeah, for now it was getting in front of council, because after talking to Chelsea, we don't have to take a formal vote, as I understand, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, to implement this. So the question first is to council, how's this look? We've already had one individual who said that from 3 to 2, 2 minutes for the statement. That was a suggestion. So as soon as council is, kind of edit, and that's why in the A section, any council member can make a motion to grant additional time. But certainly, after council gives their input, we can send it to the law director, and it will be on that table on the August meeting.
I think we all, well, I shouldn't say all, you knew that word, but many of us, regret that we haven't had a more structured understanding about how we should allow the public to present the items they come with. Sometimes we don't know exactly what they're going to say. But I think we all recognize we need this. And I hope that that's the thing we focus on, not so much looking backwards and saying, well, we really screwed up last week or whatever, but we make the effort to not have it happen again. So we appreciate your comments there, and they're certainly worth noting. But I think we'll do better because of it.
My concern was only to fortify your position, that you have the control
Right.
to do this, all right? That's my concern. I mean, we go into an executive session to discuss personnel. That's something that is black and white, black letter law, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
So you're all familiar with that, and you have the ability to enforce that. My concern only is to reinforce your conviction that you have the ability and control over those issues, all right? I'm not trying to hurt anybody or poke anybody. Capiche?
Capiche.
I just have,
And this one quick.
oh, yes, I didn't know you weren't
The
finished.
executive session purpose is to discuss the matter dealing with Mr. Staples.
You just,
We had an agenda, a city council meeting, a couple items on the agenda. Can we do that before you go into executive session?
I can't go into an executive session during a special meeting. So if we go into executive, it has to be now,
So you're going to have to.
during this meeting, yeah.
I'd like to make a motion to go into executive session
Good try,
to
Bob.
discuss pending legal matters. Am I on?
Pending legal matters?
Is that what?
Mr. Staples.
In a pending legal, ongoing.
Ongoing.
You need a
I
vote.
guess.
You got a second?
Second.
Thank you.
Second.
Ms. West?
Yes.
Mr. Kelsey?
Yes.
Mr. Moskin?
Yes?
Ms. Michael?
Yes.
Mr. Cares?
Yes.
Ms. Wood?
yes.
Mr. Harper?
Yes.